Hello everyone. Before learning Flutter, it is important to know some basic concepts of computer science. So here we are going to talk about UI, backend and DB. UI. So UI is a interface. It's a user interface. It refers to the screens, buttons, toggles, icons and other visual elements that you interact with when using a website or mobile. So basically, when a user is using a mobile application, he may be filling some sign up form, or maybe he is trying to sign in. So he need to interact with those text fields, those buttons, correct? These all things are user interface. Sometimes user maybe need to scroll to read some kind of news, or maybe some sport feeds is the scores from a sports, correct? So all those things are the part of user interface. The user interface is the very first thing which user basically interacts with. Backend. The backend or the server side is the portion of the website you don't see. You basically refers here the user. So user don't know anything about backend, the processes, whatever he interacts with. It used to be the user interface. It's responsible for storing and organizing data. Okay. So there are certain languages which can be used in the backend technologies. For example, JavaScript, Python, Ruby, PHP, Java, C Sharp, Perl, C++, Kotlin, and Scala. Database. So database basically, database is a system which is required to store the data. Like suppose user is filling a sign up form, or user is performing a sign in, correct? So this data needs to be stored somewhere, or maybe required to update, or maybe required to fetch. So when a user performs a sign up, he needs to enter the user ID, password, first name, last name, mobile number, correct? So these informations need to be saved into the database, or they need to be saved somewhere, and that place is known as database. At the time of performing sign in, from the front end, or maybe from a mobile app front end, okay, or from the website, and if user needs to enter user ID and password, so it needs to be checked. So the data have to be fetched from the database. So in all those cases, database is required. So a database is a collection of logically related information so that it can be easily accessible, managed, and updated. There are number of kind of databases which can be used. For example, Oracle, 12c, MySQL, Microsoft SQL Server, PostgreSQL, MongoDB, MariaDB, DB2, and SAP HANA. Most of the candidates from mean mud, they are very much comfortable with MongoDB. So overall, if we again see here, so overall, basically the backend and the DB storage used to be in communication. So backend logic used to be fetching the data from the database, or storing the data into the database. Okay. And in communication to DB, backend is responsible to provide the responses. It may be in the JSON format or in the XML format. So backend need to update the UI. Okay. So in this entire three layer, backend and DB are very much connected to each other, and whatever information UI the front end needs, it asks to the backend, and backend get those information from the database and provide it to the user interface. Okay, so here we are going to talk about web versus hybrid versus native. So web. So when you talk about web, it means website, it means HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Bootstrap. So website is entirely different from a mobile app. When you develop a website, you have a different kind of browsers compatibility, you have different kind of screen size, okay, you have more size. When you talk about the website web page, you have more width and height available than compared to the mobile application. Okay, so there are a lot of frameworks for developing front ends, basically developing websites. You can use React, Angular, Vue, and you can use JavaScript as a language. Native development. So when we talk about native development, it's about developing mobile apps for Android and iOS. So uh, if you are writing a native code, you need two code bases. One for iOS written in Swift or Objective C, and another for Android, uh, which will be written using the Java or Kotlin. Okay, so there are different business use cases. You should go for native versus hybrid. It all depends on the business requirement. If you talk about hybrid technologies and native technologies, from the performance point of view, uh, always we should go ahead with the native development. If you have a lot of animations, games, there are a lot of UI animations related to games. Definitely, native is better. Your application is more on the UI side. Definitely, native is better. It have to do a lot with frames. Okay, there should be no lagging behind in the user interface. Definitely go with the native. However, if your app is more data oriented, less of animations and graphics intensive, hybrid technologies are okay. Now again, it depends. Like you want to go ahead with the React Native or Flutter. So basically, in the hybrid development, there are a number of technologies. For example, React Native, Flutter, Ionic, Xamarin, Cordova. The community is still different companies are still working on all these hybrid technologies. We are working with Flutter because it just suits our requirement, and uh, with a single code base, we have both Android and iOS apps. So if you compare from the community point of view, community is still moving ahead with the Flutter. If you go ahead to the GitHub page, you will see Flutter is ahead. Great documentation, very less bugs, and the language which is Dart, which is very much similar to Kotlin and Swift. It is basically a object-oriented language, and uh, anyone who have any experience with Java or Kotlin or Swift, he can easily work with Dart. When you work with the React Native, you need a little bit of React ecosystem understanding, modules, JavaScript understanding. Uh, so I mean, it's here we are not talking about what is good or bad. Depends on your need, on your background, on your business use cases. But definitely, if you have to develop, either you will go ahead with React Native or Flutter. So you can go ahead to the official website, Flutter website. This is how it looks like. So you can see a lot of this is a web application, this is a mobile application, different kind of width and heights. You can see different resolutions, beautiful animations. You can see here. So you can develop desktop app, you can develop mobile app, you can develop watch OS, sorry, watch apps. So these are company which are already using Flutter. You can see there are a lot of these are all the companies which are using Flutter for their application development. So basically here we are talking about Flutter, and we are supporting only iOS and Android based operating system. That means we are developing for Android and iOS operating systems. Uh, we are also from a R&D point of view, we are also working on some side projects for the desktop, tablet, and watch OS. But from a commercial point of view, uh, we have our apps developed using Flutter for iOS and Android. So what is Flutter and how it is different from native development? So multi-platform, deploy to multiple devices from a single code base, mobile, web, desktop, and embedded devices. So basically, you need to write the code only in Dart language, and there would be other 20%. So 80% would be your language specific thing, Dart specific thing. 20% tooling for supporting web, desktop, but that effort will be only is great. So you will have a same common code base, and you can create IPA, you can create APK, you can create .exe, you can create .dmg, all these things. Flutter is an open source framework by Google for building beautiful, natively compiled, multi-platform applications from a single code base. That is something which makes Flutter unique. How Flutter works across cross-platform. So Flutter does not use any kind of web view or native controls of the operating system. Instead, Flutter uses its own high-performance rendering engine, which is Skia, to draw widgets. So widget, what exactly means the widget? So widget is the UI, widget is the component, widget is the label, text field, text view, table, list, whatever user interacts with, that is a widget. So Flutter does not use any kind of web view. This is the problem with other hybrid net platforms. Other platforms, Ionic, Xamarin, you will see it looks more like a kind of thing. Okay, but when you work with Flutter, there is no TL, TD, TR or kind of HTML. That is something unique with Flutter. Iskia is an open source 2D graphics library which so it's good to for general knowledge. If you want to explore more, learn about it, you can go to the official website and you can explore more. So Iskia is an open source 2D graphics library which provides common APIs that work across a variety of hardware and software platforms. It serves as the graphics engine for Google Chrome, very important and good to know. It works for Google Chrome and Chrome OS, Android, Flutter. So more details about Iskia can be found here. So this is the official website. This is the 2D graphics library, and here they are talking about it is an open source 2D graphics library which provides common APIs that work across a variety of hardware and software platforms. It serves as the graphics engine for Google Chrome and Chrome OS, Android, Flutter, and many other products. Flutter is declarative. So anybody who is coming from iOS development, and if you have worked with Swift UI, Swift UI, you will understand it. So Swift UI is what here we are talking about declarative in Flutter. If you write a UI, if you create a UI in Swift UI, you know how you write it. You create H stack, V stack, correct? Uh, and we use at the rate state, at the rate uh, published. So if you have worked with Swift UI, you would be very much getting me. So Flutter is declarative. This means that Flutter builds its user interface to reflect the current state of your app. That means whenever suppose you have data which is bind to a UI, okay, and whenever the data change, the UI will update. Whenever the data change, UI will automatically update. It's a reactive way. So this means that Flutter builds its user interface to reflect the current state of your app. When the state of your app changes, for example, the user flips a switch button, or he may click on the toggle button or a switch, In the setting screen, you change the state and that triggers a redraw of the user interface. In computer science, declarative programming is a programming paradigm, a style of building the structure and elements of computer programs that expresses the logic of a computation without describing its control flow. You can find more detailed here. It's just a Wikipedia, and you can go through with more detail to understand what is the declarative programming. But if you have already worked with SwiftUI, you already know it. Otherwise, in Flutter, you have to learn it. Okay, a little bit more theory. For creating Flutter-based websites, we can use the same code base, and it will be mostly work for websites, desktop, and mobile apps. The only problem with the web is it's still not SEO friendly. That means it will not rank in Google search results. That is a little bit problem. We can create Windows and Mac based desktop apps from the same code base. Flutter's web support enables complex standalone web apps that are rich with graphics and interactive content to reach end users on a wide variety of devices. Thank you.